right, welcome to the summer edition of Under the Dome. Is Will out of school? Because school ended here about 2 weeks before Memorial Day, or a week before Memorial Day.
Yeah, Alan. Will's last day of school was last Thursday.
Okay.
We were insistent that it was Friday because that's what the original school calendar said. And Will was telling us Wednesday he got home. He goes, "I only have one more day of school." I said, "Well, honey, technically 2 days because Friday's a half day." He goes, "No, tomorrow's our last day." So sent him off to school on Thursday, and Thursday, a little bit afternoon, there's a knock on the door, and I'm working. Thank God from home, and I answer. I open the door, and there's him, with his little cheesy grin, and he said, "I told you today was the last day of school." I'm like, okay.
Well, at least you didn't go get him up Friday morning. What are you doing home?
Yeah, right. You're right.
Should you be at school? The summer creep is for school is on. I mean, I can remember now. I'm just like an old man, but I can remember, the school starting day after Labor Day for us, and a lot of that was because, our school didn't have air conditioning. Didn't get air conditioning until I was like in fourth grade, fifth grade, and you didn't have as many holidays, and you had a full calendar year of school. Now, so many schools do the 4x4 schedule where they treat it like semesters. So they try and balance out the holidays, the number of holidays they have in the spring, which is always more than the holidays they had in the fall. So the summer creep starts. My last couple of years of high school, we were starting the last 2 weeks of August, last week of August. And now school's starting like the second or third day of August. It's just getting ridiculous. And it's frustrating here because hurricane season, the worst or the most active time is at the end of August and the early weeks of September. So, I mean, Katrina and Ida both have 8/29 as their dates, so it's always bothered me because I felt like, hey, you can just push it to Labor Day and take away some of these other holidays that you have during the year and, avoid, we're just starting school. Oh, wait, now we got to sit out for a couple of days of a hurricane.
Yeah. In addition to, at least up here, there's Act 80 days and conference days and in-service days. And hey, listen, I know Debbie's a teacher, and I respect teachers. I almost was one myself. So I'm all for teachers and kids getting days off of school. But I know if I was a student, give me a longer summer break. I don't need days off in the middle of November and February and and everything else. You can minimize those.
Yeah, it's so miserable in August here. It really is. September's not that much better, but at least you get the feeling it's going to be close. Fall's going to be closer than it is. So, well, happy birthday month, Jerry.
Happy birthday, Jerry. Happy birthday month.
How old are you going to be, Jerry? I'm going to guess probably in your 30s. I'm going to say because you've been with us for a while. I'm going to guess you're probably going to be in your 30s. Let's see if I'm right.
Jerry Allen's kissing your ass. I'm going to guess you're our age, somewhere in your 40s or 50s.
He's not revealing it to us, so
that's fair.
Yeah. Well, you're not a woman, so it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to ask women how old they are.
Right.
I just make obscene guesses. That's all. Okay. We were both off. Well, he is close to our age. He's 41 next Saturday, so you'd be Alvin Kamara. Okay, Alvin Kamara age. That's a good one. Bob's running the thing. We were just talking about this off the air. Bob is running a countdown on Saints Wire because we're less than 100 days away from the beginning of the regular season. You're up to 95 now, right?
Yeah, did 95, 96 today. 95 is already written and ready to be published for tomorrow. Ridgeway.
Ridgeway. Okay. So I'm sitting there going, okay, I know Leroy Glover, 97. I'm going 98. Oh, Willie Whitehead, 99, Big Norman Hand. I'm going through my Rolodex of players because as we were talking off the air back in 2018, I had done, who wore it better, and I ran through a list of numbers. When you get into numbers like 7, for example, you're going to obviously look at Morton Anderson, Taysom Hill, guys who wore number 7 for the Saints. You start getting into some of the more common numbers like 32, 34. 34, there's a lot of players. 36, 21. Those are some popular numbers for a lot of good players for the Saints. 41 I always threw out there and kind of throws people off. They always think, okay, Alvin Kamara is the first running back to wear 41. No, he wasn't. Jimmy Rogers wore 41 in the early 80s, and Jimmy Rogers was a pretty good back over at Oklahoma before he came to the Saints, and he was like the third back for the Saints. So yeah, it's just it's good history, and I felt like that because Archie Manning just visited the OTAs last week, and he was out there talking. He's got his cane. He was out there talking to his quarterbacks, and the strange thing about this, the Manning Passing Academy is going to be up in a couple of weeks. All the quarterbacks and the head coach have gone through the Manning Passing Academy as players, and it's for 6th through 12th grade players. So it's an amazing accomplishment that, Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shuck, Kellen Moore. I wouldn't be surprised if, Doug Nussmeier and Scott Tolan probably came through there. Just all these quarterbacks that have gone through the past 28 years. And it's really something special that he really has built out there. And it helps that Peyton and Eli have become the successful quarterbacks that they were in the NFL, giving even more credence to the Manning Passing Academy. It's not just an old guy from the 70s running this thing.
Right.
It's guys. It's guys that you're going, okay, I know who these people are too. I played with these people. I saw these people on TV as a kid for all these young players coming up. So it's a great thing out there at Nichols. So Bob, OTAs, there's not much going on. Tyler Shuck is apparently looking a little bit better now. They're talking about, they did some kind of quarterback challenge where he had to hit, each quarterback had to hit so many targets in nets. And Shuck was like Breeze-like. He hit 6 or 7 in a row, whereas Rattler and I think, I can never remember the other guy's name, number 18 for them.
Hunter Deckers.
Decker. How could I forget that? Decker unit, from Star Trek. But yeah, Decker, and Rattler, they hit some, they missed some. But, Shuck looked out there and he's been dropping dimes in those 7-on-7 drills, deep passes and things. Pretty much looking like the guy that they probably thought they were drafting. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I mean, I pay about as much credence to that as Spencer Rattler outperforming Tyler Shuck in the first OTA session. But I mean, it's good to know that Tyler Shuck can throw an accurate ball, get back to me when he does so while making an accurate read, against an NFL defense in a game that counts. But yeah. I mean, irregardless, you don't want to see your second round draft choice at quarterback spraying things all over the place and missing the nets. I mean, if you're looking for something positive, want to grasp onto something positive at this time of year, that's something for sure.
And then I read, I think it was Jeff Duncan that said this today, that both Chase Young and Carl Granderson have dropped considerable weight. They're down to like 265, which is fitting for a stand-up rusher. This is really the first off season that Chase Young, because remember he had surgery last year for his neck right after the Saints signed him. This is really the first year he is in there for the mini camps, for the OTAs, for all the off-season activities that they're going to be doing, and will be ready from the jump at training camp. Do you think we're going to see a better Chase Young this year?
Yeah, I think that there's a strong chance that we will. I'm not surprised to hear both Chase and Granderson work out as stand-up edge rushers. We thought that was going to be the case when Brandon Staley was hired, expecting Staley would incorporate much of his 3-4 background into the Saints' new defense, and it looks like that's what's going to happen. And at least the Chase Young that we have seen all the way back to Ohio State, that should play right into his best attributes, putting him in space where he can kind of showcase his athleticism, speed, get a running start at offensive tackles to set up counter moves. Whether that increases his ability to finish plays, we shall see. Chase was primarily a stand-up rusher at Ohio State, where he set the school record, both career and single season, I believe, in quarterback sacks. And that's what got him drafted second overall. But since he's been in the NFL, Washington was a 4-3 scheme, San Francisco a 4-3 scheme, and the Saints a 4-3 scheme. So we've seen Chase Young almost always with his hand in the dirt. Lined up out wide when possible, but still hand in the dirt. Now he's going to get a running start. So I am looking forward to seeing what he could do in this scheme. The Saints are certainly believing that he's the answer, not only due to the fact that they re-signed him to that 3-year contract before free agency, but also the fact that they didn't bother bringing in a significant, I don't count Chris Rumpf as a significant addition. And I like what I've seen on film from Fadil Diggs, but he's a 7th-round draft choice. Same with Jasheen Davis, the edge rusher from Wake Forest, undrafted guy. Love what I've seen on film, but there's a reason why these guys were hardly drafted, either not drafted or hardly drafted at all. The Saints believe that Chase Young and Carl Granderson are the answers outside, so hopefully they're right.
Yeah, these are definitely positions that we're going to have to watch once they put the pads on and see what happens, and also go when it gets to the preseason games and seeing what these guys look like. Because a lot of these starters are going to have to play a significant amount of snaps, I think, this preseason just to get used to the schemes and the coverages and get up to speed quickly. And that's going to be a challenge because this team is lacking a lot of depth, and I'm not sold on it.
No.
And right now the OTAs, it's just so hard to predict what they do. Any of the stuff they're doing is going to carry over into the regular season because there is no contact. They're not physical at all. In fact, you get fined if it's physical. You can lose a draft pick if it gets too physical. So it's tough. It's tough to really look at anything they're doing in OTAs as anything more than install, offensive and defensive install, and trying to get guys to look at guys and see what they can do. Also yesterday, officially was the Derek Carr retirement day and Ryan Ramczyk retirement day. Both of those officially went through as of June 1st. So the Saints got a little bit of cash relief, cap relief. I think $30 million went back to the Saints because of Carr. I don't know how much for Ramczyk. It's weird because we talked a little bit about Ramczyk once he announced his retirement officially, but Ramczyk kind of got swept under the rug a little bit because of the Derek Carr stuff and the new coach and the draft and everything else. Do you think, well, we talked about the best offensive lineman ever, but do you think that Ryan Ramczyk is a Hall of Fame candidate? I mean, I know he'll be in the Saints Hall of Fame, but do you think he's a Hall of Fame candidate, like a Jari Evans, for example?
No, I don't. I think Ryan Ramczyk was a Hall of Fame caliber player.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, between 2017 and 2020, there was none better. Yeah, none at any offense. I'm not just talking tackle, any offensive line spot. But once 2021 hit, his knee really started to give him problems. He started missing a lot of practice time, affected his mobility in games. And then 2022, 2023, he started missing games.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he was at that level long enough to be considered an NFL Hall of Famer. Like you said, he's a lock for the Saints Hall of Fame. My personal opinion is he's the third best Saints offensive lineman of all time. No doubting that Willie Roaf is the first. I think Jari Evans is the second. And Ryan Ramczyk would have an argument for number two if he played a little bit longer. But yeah, I think that's ultimately what's going to hold him back from Canton is the fact that he just didn't play at the top, at an elite level for quite long enough.
Well, I hate to bring up bad memories, but 2018, if the Saints get the right call and he goes to the Super Bowl in 2018 and now has a ring when he retires, does that make a difference?
Yeah, I think it does. Maybe not as much for an offensive lineman as other players, but we've seen how much of a difference it makes, for a lot of guys at different positions. So yeah, I mean, we could play the what if game until the end of time. I think not having a ring is what's going to keep Cam Jordan. Cam Jordan's a first ballot Hall of Famer if they get a ring in 2018. I'm convinced of that. And now I'm afraid that he might get snubbed altogether. But at the very least, he's going to have to wait a few years.
Yeah, and speaking of snubbing, Jim Marshall passed away today. Jim Marshall is not in the NFL Hall of Fame. And if the NFL is what I think they are, they're probably going to put him in the Hall of Fame within the next couple of years now that he's dead. And that really, really sucks because that man deserved to have gotten a shot when he was alive because he was a guy who, I think he has the record for most consecutive starts as a player. Undersized guy, really light, especially once the season started to play out, and it was now getting to be December. Been in 4 Super Bowls, member of a legendary defense, but he's not in the Hall of Fame because he didn't win a ring. He did not win it. And come Super Bowl time, his lack of size and lack of weight was really exposed, especially in Super Bowl 11, where Art Shell just totally erased him. So it's weird. Super Bowls really, really impact or influence Hall of Fame voting. And that's why I was so pissed off about 2018, among many, many reasons. Because it changed so many narratives. It changed, Drew Brees now would have beaten both Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in a Super Bowl. So there's no longer the Brady Manning. Oh, and throwing Aaron Rodgers in there. Well, screw Aaron Rodgers because Brees has 2 rings and Brees beat both of those other guys. So it's now Brady, Brees, Manning. And there's nobody questioning, Aaron Rodgers was the guy who won a Super Bowl. Oh, yeah, he won those 4 MVPs, but he didn't win enough Super Bowls, so he's not in that conversation, Because that's what they like to throw at Brees. We didn't get any MVPs. That's why Aaron Rodgers is better. No, he's not.
No, not even close.
Yeah, and Kamara was probably going to be a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. Cam Jordan. Sean Payton, he will go in the Hall of Fame, but Sean Payton winning 2 Super Bowls with the Saints erases a lot of the buts, so it's just, there's so much. I mean, every time I think about 2018, I get pissed off again. And as these guys like Ramczyk start to retire, that's going to come up again and again, and it gets like acid reflux. It's going to just keep coming up and burning and pissing me off. because they were robbed, and it changed legacies. So, so that brings me to the NFC South in general. One of the things I want to talk about tonight was the rest of that division and also the Saints. What would constitute a successful season for the Saints, and what would have to go right for us to get that kind a successful season? Because I don't want to talk about playoffs, or I don't want to talk about winning divisions and things like that. I'm just talking about what would be considered a successful season given this team and its rebuilding, and also just has the NFC South really improved or really changed much since last year?
I don't know which one of those things to tackle first.
Let's go with the Saints first, and then we'll go to the rest of the NFC South.
Well, and I know you said you don't want to talk about playoffs, but I do. I think you have to start there. In 2000, first year under Haslett, nobody expected that team to make a playoff run. Same thing, certainly in 2006 when Peyton came on board. Now, I completely agree with you. I look at this roster now under Kellen Moore, and I think to myself, I'm like, yeah, there's talent here. They can play with a lot of the teams in the NFL, but I don't know if I don't believe that they can sustain a high enough level of play to be a playoff team. But I think that's doing so would certainly shock most of the world, and you'd be considered an outstanding season if you did so. Kellen Moore would certainly be at least in consideration for NFL Coach of the Year. As well he should be. Shuck, Rookie of the Year. You probably a few other postseason awards sprinkled in there, most certainly. So I'm not going to take it off the table altogether. Having said that, I don't expect it to happen. And I think realistically, a good year for the Saints would be anywhere from 6 to 9 wins, especially in the 7, 8, 9 win ratio, where you knock off a couple teams that you shouldn't, and you are legitimately a tough out on team schedule in December. If you check off those boxes, 7 to 9 wins, 7 or 8 wins, upset a couple teams, and you're better at the end of the year than you were at the beginning, I think you can legitimately call that a good season. But I mean, especially when you look at national prognostications, most everything I have seen has the Saints in last place, which is just completely short-sighted. I know we'll get into the NFC South as a whole in a minute. I do think that we'll see a better team by the end of the year than we saw on the field through the midseason and end of the season, from the Saints last year. But there's a lot of ifs that have to take place. Does the depth improve? Do the rookies and second-year players develop quickly? Do the veterans, Cam, DeMario, Alvin, Tyron, do they hold on for one more good year, one more nice run? Do you stay healthy? That's a lot of ifs. A lot of ifs. But yeah, I mean, realistically, I think 7 to 9 wins should not be off of the realm of expectation.
Well, I would consider 7 to 9 wins a successful season. Somebody asked if Tyler Shuck throws for like 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, and say 14 interceptions. Is that a good year? I'm like, hell yeah, it's a good year. For a rookie. Hell yes, it's a good year for him. I mean, health determines everything. I mean, it really, really does. And you need a couple guys to step up who haven't stepped up, or are young players who kind of come out of nowhere and really have an impact. I'm looking at Devin Neal, I'm looking at Danny Stutzman, those kind of guys having, and of course you've got to assume your first and second round pick are having good years too. But I'm talking about get 3 or 4 starters or heavy contributors out of this draft class. that would be a very successful draft. So to me, if this team can put together 7-9 wins and probably start on the winning streak in October, October, November, and be a better team in December than they were in September, yeah, that's a really good season. But yeah, I don't. That's why I took playoffs off the table, because I just don't think this is a playoff caliber team. I don't think this is a playoff caliber division. I think the only team that goes to the playoffs in this division this year is the team that wins it. There's not going to be a wild card team out of here. So if you're winning 7-9 games, you're right in the thick of this division, because I think most of these teams are 7 to 10 win teams, maybe 11 if they pull off a sweep, of the conference or the division, not the conference, the division. And I just don't know if that's going to be possible, because my other question to you, and that's why we're going to lead into the rest of the division. My other question to you was, has this division really improved? And in my opinion, it hasn't. I think we're pretty much still locked into Tampa, probably the favorite to win. I have zero faith in Atlanta. I know Atlanta's the sexy pick right now to win a division, but I just don't trust them, because I don't trust Penix, and I definitely don't trust that coaching staff. I just think Raheem Morris, almost a Todd Bowles. He's over there in Tampa, but Raheem Morris, I think, is going to find ways to blow things. He makes bad decisions, and it costs his team games. Penix, this will be his first year as a starter. He was not that impressive as a rookie. How much does he grow? Who's he throwing to? Drake London's the only proven receiver they got, and Drake London is a 50-50 guy.
He's grotesquely overrated.
Yes, he is. They don't have the injury bug, but they have a lot of guys who just aren't. They should be better than they really are. I'm looking at you, Kyle Pitts, for what you drafted. Bijan Robinson should be better than what he is. He should be like a Saquon Barkley level threat, where Atlanta can run the ball down your throat. But it's like they will run the ball for 2 or 3 drives, and all of a sudden he wants to wing it and throw it the entire drive and never put Bijan Robinson even in there. So, I'm like, I don't understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to do a balanced offensive attack. You're not really that balanced, because you go from one extreme to another, not in the same drive, but it's 3 drives one way, another drive the other way. Baker Mayfield has a habit of throwing interceptions. We've seen that playing us. We've seen that. And Carolina, okay. You're starting to put some weapons together. Is that defense any better? Is Atlanta's defense any better? I mean, he spent a lot of draft capital to improve that pass rush. Can they stop the run? So let me get your thoughts on it, though. I'm doing most of the talking, but let me get your thoughts on this. What do you think of these teams?
I think Carolina is going to be the most improved team of the Saints' 3 divisional opponents. I do like what they're doing, and finally surrounding Bryce Young with weapons. But like you said, I question the defense. I don't see any major improvements on that side of the ball. Atlanta spent their first 2 draft choices on edge rush. Well, there's a reason for that. They are literally the worst team in the NFL, and have been for the last few years, at rushing the passer. But where's the run defense? Where's the secondary? You have the Drake London of cornerbacks, the overrated AJ Terrell, and then nobody else. No speed at linebacker. When and I like Caden Ellis as a player, but when Caden Ellis is your best linebacker, you don't have a great linebacking core. Tampa Bay. I love Tampa Bay's offense. I love Tampa Bay's receiving core. even the jackass that is Mike Evans. And then you add Ibuka to that. They have a powerful offensive line. Baker Mayfield has resurrected his career for sure, but he is a slightly better version of Jameis Winston. As far as a very streaky passer in Tampa Bay, we talk about how age got to the New Orleans Saints defense last year. I would not be surprised if the same thing happens to the Tampa Bay defense this year. And you talk about Raheem Morris, and his coaching inadequacies. Todd Bowles is at least as bad. And he's been fortunate to have 2 straight very good offensive coordinators, but they're replacing an offensive coordinator for the 3rd year in a row. I still think Tampa Bay is the team to beat in that division, and I think that they, on paper, they're a potential 10 to 11 win team. I don't see Atlanta competing for the division title, and I don't see Carolina there yet. And you can call me a homer if you want. I think the New Orleans Saints have the best chance of knocking off the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Don't necessarily believe that it'll happen, but I think that's what we're looking at again, folks, is Tampa Bay probably winning the division by 2 or 3 games, and New Orleans edging out, an overrated Atlanta team and a not quite there yet Carolina team. So I think the NFC South is going to have a different look this year, but I don't know that they're necessarily going to be better as a whole.
Yeah, the Saints go 3-3 in our division, split with all the teams. That's a big step forward. I mean, they only won 2 last year, if I remember right. I think they split with Carolina, they split with Atlanta, and they got swept by Tampa. So they only won 2. But if they go 3-3, split with all of them, that's a step forward. Again, it's a weak division, and it's because these other teams, 2 of them have the talent, but have terrible coaches, head coaches. Honestly, Tampa and Atlanta are being held back by their coaches, which is fine with me.
Oh,
but
yeah.
They really are, because Tampa is a team that wins the division and should win a couple of playoff games. They have enough talent on their team, offensive talent on their team. They should win a couple of playoff games. They win the wild card round, maybe, but they lose in the divisional round, because when they have to go against a better head coach, he outcoaches them. And that's usually how the team falls apart. That's usually how the team loses, because this coach can outcoach Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles likes to throw those blitzes at you and all these things, and those coaches suddenly decide, oh, hey, he's going to blitz on this down. So what we're going to do, we're going to get right behind where those linebackers are, and we're going to expose those blitz plays. And we're going to go after Baker Mayfield, because we think if we hit and knock around Baker, that's when the bad decisions come out. That's when he starts panicking and throwing the ball in bad positions, and that will help us cover those receivers, because we want Baker to throw the interceptions. Atlanta, same thing. Poor clock management. The players go brain dead. Drake London drops key passes. Kyle Pitts drops key passes. Same old thing. And Carolina, he's got a long road to go. I mean, I think they're offensively are going to be a better team. I think offensively they're going to be able to run the ball better. They're going to be able to throw the ball better. But Bryce Young is still Bryce Young. He's still a little undersized. He's still a little streaky. And that defense is a work in progress. They have an opportunity to surprise some people. I would not be surprised to see Carolina sweep Atlanta, just to throw the monkey wrench in Atlanta's plans. They think they're going to win this division. It'll be interesting to see. But as bad as the Saints, all the things that went wrong for the Saints last year, I just can't see them winning fewer than 5 games.
No.
And these guys have them winning 2 games, 3 games at most. They really, and we've talked about this, or at least I've talked about it over and over again. And a lot of it is because they don't believe in Tyler Shuck.
Mm-hmm.
The national media doesn't believe in Tyler Shuck. They were supposed to draft Shedeur Sanders, and they didn't do it. So this is your punishment. We're going to say that you're the worst team in the NFL, and you don't have a quarterback because you didn't draft Shedeur Sanders. And it's ridiculous because there's no guarantee that Shedeur Sanders is going to be a stud. There's no guarantee that Tyler Shuck's going to be a bust. We don't know. And then that's the whole reason why you play the game. So I just can't get into that. I really can't. Yeah. Mel Kiper's still pissed. Dove, somebody or other over there on X must write every other week about how good Shedeur Sanders looks in training camp or OTAs with the Browns, in comparison to Dylan Gabriel, who's always ripping on Dylan Gabriel. I don't want that. And already they're getting tired of the film crews that are coming around. And Sanders, I think he had his spring press conference or something, and he admitted maybe he screwed up and ruined his son's chances of getting drafted in the first round. Whatever, man. I'm glad. I don't want that circus. I don't want, I don't need all that stuff.
Nope.
I just don't.
And neither does Kellen Moore. And I'm convinced that that's part of the reason why they only lightly evaluated Sanders, because they saw that and they're like, okay, we'll never know how they felt about him as a player, but it's obvious that they felt Tyler Shuck would be a better fit. And I think that's just one of probably several reasons why.
Well, yeah. And your attitude too is, I don't want the circus because I don't believe he's a franchise changing quarterback. So I don't need the circus. If I'm going to ride with somebody, and with the idea of, okay, if he fails, I've got next year to draft. I'd rather ride with somebody who is far less, I guess, media attention. There's far less media attention on him, because the worst thing could happen is, okay, we are as bad as people say we are. Then we're drafting in the top 5. Much deeper quarterback class. We can go draft Drew Aller or someone like that. We don't have to, because I don't. Archman is not coming out in 2026. He would have to have a Joe Burrow type of year where he wins a national championship and he wins the Heisman and all these things, but it's just not enough starts. It isn't. So, but that's the same. That's got to be the Saints' attitude. We'll see what happens, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, it's hard for people because they want that franchise quarterback now, and we're going to do it now. Everything's now. Sounds like Veruca Salt from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I want it now. Okay, so I guess the one of the other things that we had brought up that I was going to talk about today, looking at rookie receivers for the Saints. Who do you think had, and I know the obvious answer to this question, who do you think are some of the best Saints receivers who really showed you that they were the best their rookie season, had outstanding rookie years? Because there's a couple there that people are going to say, well, Eric Martin, but Eric Martin wasn't a stud in 85 when he got to the Saints, so
nope.
Who are some of the ones other than the obvious one, which I know you're going to say right now?
Yeah, I mean the obvious one, and I know you agree is Marcus Colston.
Yeah.
And also the fact that he was a late seventh round draft choice and just came out of nowhere, to do what he did was just incredible. After that, number two has got to be Mike Thomas, right? Now, Mike Thomas had 92 receptions and 1,100 yards as a rookie. But it's easy. I know it's easy to forget that he wasn't the number one receiver through the first half of that year. He had to earn Drew Brees' trust.
Yeah.
But I mean, numbers wise, Mike Thomas is number two. And numbers wise, you got to go Chris Olave number three, right? Chris had over 1,000 yards. I forget how many receptions, but like 75 catches. But again, Michael Thomas was the number one receiver until he got hurt again. That year. So it took Chris Olave a while to really get his footing. Brandon Cooks was Cooks 2014 or 2015 rookie?
2014. 2014.
Yeah, I think you're right. He got a late start, as a secondary target because Colston was still on the tail end of his career, but the number one target. And just as Cooks was coming on, he got hurt. And I think Cooks ended up with like 600-700 yards receiving. Those are the ones that pop into my head. Devery Henderson, I might be wrong in this. Devery had a decent rookie year, but again, you're not talking about a number one target. So of all those guys, Colston by week 2, he'd earned Drew Brees' trust, and he was the unquestioned number one wide receiver, for the New Orleans Saints. So Colston is the guy.
And Colston caught the first touchdown pass from Drew Brees as a Saint against the Cleveland Browns. Well, I'm going to throw out two names that not many think of, especially the second name. But Danny Abramowitz, of course, back in 1967, everybody knows the story. 17th round pick out of Xavier, was cut, refused to leave, demanded not to be, given another shot, not to be cut. Stuck around and ended up catching, I think, consecutive passes for 105 straight games. Something ridiculous like that. Went to the Pro Bowl in '69, but he had a good season with an expansion ball club back in '67. So he was the first. Dante Stallworth back in 2003, his rookie year, he caught like 5 consecutive games with a touchdown pass. He had a really good rookie season for a team that was kind of stacked at receivers when he got drafted. I mean, they were Joe Horn already as your number one guy. I think Jake Reed may have still been there. I don't remember. He came back in 2003. If memory serves, you also had Jerome Pan there, and they were all part of the names I just mentioned. Well, Jake Reed, not him, but the names I just mentioned half the guys that were in the River City Relay. Stallworth's rookie year, and who's the first person the ball goes to is Stallworth, and he's the one that throws the lateral across the field to Deuce McAllister, or it might have been Michael Lewis. I don't remember the exact order. I know it was Stallworth, I think Lewis, McAllister, and then he saw Pan running across the middle, and Pathan's the one that actually scored. So I think that's how it goes. So, but yeah, those two guys. Joe Horn doesn't count because he wasn't he had a great first year as a Saint, but he was already an NFL player. He came from the Chiefs. You're talking about Eric Martin. Believe it or not, Wes Chandler didn't do very much his rookie year in '78 because Tinker Owens was having a solid season, and they were kind of using Chandler more as a kick returner than as a receiver. It was his '79 season. He came on in '78, but '79 is when he had his breakout year as a player, his second year. I'm trying to think of the other, and then you go from 1970 to 1977. These receivers they had were horrible. We talk about how bad the Saints quarterback room looks, and maybe how bad the receiving core looks. Good God, they were terrible.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason Archie Manning struggled as much as he did. No receiver help, no offensive line help, and no running game. You don't get a 1,000-yard rush until 1979. So, but other than that, I mean, it's hard to pick guys because the Saints just didn't have very much success drafting receivers. Lindsey Scott. Let me think of some of these other receivers they've drafted over the past few years. Not in the Sean Payton era, but yeah. I mean, even Robert Meacham didn't even play his rookie season. So we pretty much named all the ones that had great rookie years.
Yeah. And I can't believe I forgot about that I forgot about Stallworth.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not that he played during a forgettable era. It's not that he played for bad teams like Archie's teams through the 70s or the early 80s. These Saints were very explosive offensively. I mean, if fantasy football was anything like it is now, that team was a fantasy dream. With Brooks and Horn and Deuce and Pathan, and then you add Dante and. And like I said, he's just he's easy to forget.
Yeah, Stallworth was a rookie in 2002, so he was not a rookie with River City Relay, but he did catch 42 passes for 594 yards and 8 touchdowns his rookie year, and he never reached the 8 touchdown plateau ever again. He got 3 touchdowns in 2003, 5 in 2004, 7 in 2005, which is unbelievable. But just like in with the 1980 Saints, guys had accumulated some stats, but the wins weren't coming. And then he was in Philadelphia for 2006, the Patriots for 2007, Cleveland for 2008. I didn't realize he played for this many teams. Baltimore in 2010. He was suspended in 2009 because of that drunk driving incident where he killed somebody, if I remember right.
Yeah, he did.
Washington in 2011, where he caught 2 touchdown passes, and he finished his career in 2012 with the New England Patriots again. He was only there for 1 game. He had 1 reception for 63 yards and a touchdown. That figures. Yeah. It's amazing. But yeah, for Stallworth's rookie year, we thought we really had a stud. And, Colston's performance was pretty much why Stallworth was expendable. And it's funny when we talk about Colston, a lot of people don't remember this, but these OTAs and this mini camp coming up, Colston was really in terrible shape. He was struggling in the heat. He looked like a 7th round pick that you weren't going to get much out of. If memory serves, the guy that everybody was all excited about was Mike Haas.
Yes.
Not Colston. They weren't even thinking about Colston. They all were looking at Mike Haas. Him, and there's a receiver named Chase Lyman. I don't know if you remember this guy. Do you remember Chase Lyman, his story? He had gotten an ACL out of a cadaver. And he was supposed to rebuild his knee, and he was going to be this big, physical, explosive player, and it never panned out. I mean, he just could not play anymore. He couldn't run. But Chase Lyman, there was a lot of hype about him, too, when the Saints drafted him. One of the many Hazlitt picks. So, but, so what I'd like to do each week is I'm going to bring up positions. Obviously, we're not going to talk about quarterbacks because there's only one rookie quarterback really that did anything of significance. That was Archie Manning. But we're going to talk about running backs. We're going to talk about tight ends. We're going to talk about defensive linemen, linebackers, because we get to the linebackers. Some of the names you might be thinking about didn't really catch on to the second year.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were some linebackers and some players I'm thinking of. They were 1 year wonders. You know, their rookie year, they looked like they were going to be the answer, and then something happened, injuries generally, and they kind of fall off after that. So, just something to think about. Just when we're going through these summer episodes, we're kind of stretched for material. You know, it gets to be hard. You know, Chad mentioned earlier, I don't know if he's still in there or not, but Chad mentioned earlier if we had seen Moore's workout at 90 years old. We did. We talked a lot about Moore last week because it was his birthday. And the guy's in great shape. I saw a video of him with Channel 6 talking about, you know, his workouts, and he's still the same Moore, you know, still got the sharp tongue. You know, if you piss him off, he's going to say what's exactly on his mind. Now that he's 90, now he really doesn't give a damn. You know,
doesn't have to worry about getting another job or anything like that.
That's right. That's right. He did curse on air because he didn't realize he was live. And somebody asked him something about the guy. He says, "Man, I don't give a shit about that." He goes, Jim, we're on the air. And he's like, "We're not on the air. You serious? We're on the air?" So, but you know, Jim Moore is just a treasure, especially the more that we have seen these past few years. The coaches have a program. You know, they're not going to say much. They're not going to do much up there. Jim Moore just wore his emotions on his sleeve. Mm-hmm. And he let you know exactly what he was thinking all the time. And that the more time passes, the more we really appreciate. Oh, look, there's John Mikum right there. That is in the background there. I was looking for some NFL film stuff on Jim Marshall, and ended up going to the Lost Treasures edition. This is the 70s, and they're talking about 70s fashion. There's mutton chops over there. Manny Fernandez, someone else who belongs in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. You know, and they're just talking about the different outfits that they have on it. John Mikum. People don't realize it was crazy, and this is a good segue into this, because yesterday was the 40th anniversary. It's been 40 years since Tom Benson bought the Saints from John Mikum, and that was in June 2nd, 1985. And people have forgotten, I guess, about the John Mikum era, or weren't alive for that era. John Mikum was 26 years old when he was awarded the Saints team. Can you imagine a 26-year-old owner? I mean, he was younger than some of his players. You know, I mean, it's just it's inconceivable that you would expect a 26-year-old to know how to run an NFL franchise.
Well, he didn't.
Yeah, exactly. And that was part of the problem, because, you know, he's hiring his friends. He's listening to older owners. You know, Carol Rosenblum screwed him so many times, and he was the owner of the Rams. Before that, he owned the Baltimore Colts. Well, guess who got the #1 overall pick from '67, the expansion year? Because he suckered him into taking Gary Quazzo, the Baltimore Colts. And who did they select? Bubba Smith. Who suckered him into taking not even asking for a first-round pick back, but letting the Saints trade away their first-round pick so they could select Burt Jones in the '73 draft. Carol Rosenblum, although he had already traded ownership with the Rams owners, so the Ursays now owned it, but he still took care of his team. You know, got you Burt Jones. So I mean, it's just, and you saw this happen again and again and again. And then when Carol Rosenblum, right before he died, asked John Mikum, "Take care of my son Steve, and make if something happens to me." Of course, he drowns in '79. So 1980, here comes Steve Rosenblum as GM for the Saints. Well, Dick Nolan was GM, so now you got two GMs. Now you have to divide power up, and it's just, and Mika made these kind of bad decisions over and over and over again. So it's just, it's. I was so glad when that happened, but I don't think people realize how close the Saints came to being the Jacksonville Saints. How close they came to. I think they said Oakland and Baltimore were interested in maybe getting the Saints to come, especially because the Colts had just left in '83 to go to Indianapolis, and Jacksonville. It was pushing hard to get the Colts too. I mean, people, I know a lot of people weren't old enough or just weren't paying that close attention, but yeah, all these franchise moving like that. Yeah, that was Jackson was trying very hard to get an NFL franchise. The Jacksonville Bulls of the USFL were one of the most attended franchises for the USFL. It's people just don't think about that. Do you remember when did you start watching the Saints again?
78 was my first memory. And then the 79 Monday night game against the Raiders. But then I really, really, really got into the team, after being in my first trip to New Orleans in '84.
Okay. So that was after Mikum pretty much put the team up for sale. Yeah. People ask about it. They think that the Saints have always had sellouts and fans going out to watch those games and stuff. Well, the first sellout in the Superdome, when the Superdome opened, happened in '79 against the Falcons opening day. They didn't sell out 75, 76, 77, 78. So a lot of games weren't shown on TV. It took a while. And when Bum Phillips came in '83, you started seeing a couple of sellouts as that team got closer. But '84, '85 again, people weren't watching.
Nope.
It was midway through the '87 season before you started seeing sellouts and people going to games and stuff like that. And Benson hiring Jim Finks and Finks and Benson hiring Jim Mora really was the key to turning this whole franchise and the city around to the Saints. And it's why there's this, as much success as we had under Sean Payton and Drew Brees, it's still a very thin thread that holds the Saints here. And it takes having a good owner, and it takes having a good coach and the fans wanting to support a team. Mark, I thought about this. There are times where I think that, when people say Gail's got to sell this team and we should get a private equity firm or hedge fund people or something like that to buy this team, or maybe the guy who owns Canes, Todd Graves, to buy the Saints, I worry about that. That somebody's going to buy this team that doesn't have ties to the city, and San Diego will offer that multi-billion-dollar or trillion-dollar stadium with all the amenities, and the NFL would love to be back in San Diego again. Just because that was a good market. It's a great host city for Super Bowls. The weather's perfect. They would love to have a team in San Diego again. It kind of makes them mad that the Chargers went to Los Angeles. They wanted just the Rams to support Los Angeles. So, it's a fear I have. It is a legitimate fear that the Saints, if they get the wrong owner, Gail dies, they get the wrong owner, that a team like that would go to San Diego. I don't know. San Diego also, the reason why they don't have a team is because they weren't going to build a new stadium.
Right.
So I don't know how that's going to play. And San Diego in California is not a city that bends over backwards to keep their sports teams. I mean, the Raiders left Oakland
Twice.
Yeah. San Francisco's a little bit different, but they got the Rams back. But outside the NFL, does anyone really care the Rams are in Los Angeles? I don't think St. Louis ever gets another team.
No, and that's a shame.
Yeah, it just strikes me as burned me once with the Cardinals. Bill Bedwell, he's a terrible owner, but burned me twice now with the Rams, who they did support, but you demanded a brand new stadium after we built that stadium for you. That's tough. That's tough for them to justify. So, Bob, what do you have coming up on the Bayou Blitz tomorrow?
Trying to rope in. We think we will. Waiting to hear back from Courtney Roby. His availability. Both his daughters play in a lot of volleyball tournaments. And traveling volleyball squads. So the family's right up my alley. Waiting to hear whether he's going to be available Wednesday or Thursday. But we are planning for a Wednesday show with hopefully Courtney Roby. Stay tuned for those announcements tomorrow. And Jimmy Gumbo, thank you. For your compliment about the countdown series. I will continue it. As long as my eyes stay open. And I can fight off fatigue. But yeah, I mean, we'll talk more about OTAs. Position previews, potential roster dark horses, things like that.
Good deal. And like we said in the beginning of the show, the full team mandatory mini camp will be the 10th to the 12th, I think, of next week. So far, guys like Taysom Hill have not participated. They haven't seen many of those guys around because they are rehabbing. It's not that they're just skipping just to skipping. So It'll be interesting to see who shows up, who doesn't, who does work, who doesn't. I think that's probably the biggest thing to take away from these. Last question tonight. Do you think that the Saints sign anybody with some of this extra cash that they have?
They brought in the defensive tackle, defensive end, Jonathan Bullard, more of a run stopper. Mm-hmm. They're still waiting. As far as I know, they're still waiting on Asante Samuel, and how that initial rehab is going to go. Personally, I get the feeling that they're just kind of kicking the tires on some veteran defensive linemen, backups, rotational guys, and they're hedging their bets for Asante Samuel and a possible backup quarterback. That's my hunch.
So Mark is asking, do you think Taysom comes back by October? I really don't know. It depends on if they put him on a physically unable to perform list or not.
Yeah, and that'll be the key because the PUP list keeps him out until at least mid-October. Mm-hmm. They are hoping to have him back, at least running, jogging, going through light stuff by training camp. If he's not, then that doesn't bode well, for the first half of the season.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we probably won't know anything until training camp actually starts, because that's when they have to make those decisions. Right now, they don't have to make that decision yet. They just want to see how far he's progressed, and I don't know how open Kellen Moore is going to be about progression on injury recovery. So I hope he comes back. I really, and I said this on X and I've said it elsewhere. He deserves, even if he only plays for a couple of games this year, he deserves to go out to a full stadium. He needs to, if he is going to, this is going to be his last year, he needs to make that announcement. So the last home game of the season is a sellout, and the fans are all there because he deserves the cheers. I mean, he deserves to get the goodbye that Drew Brees, unfortunately, was not able to get.
Mm-hmm.
I probably will not. It's going to be in New Orleans. It's just hard for me to make it over there. I'd have to go on weekends, and I'll be honest with you, it is hot as hell out there. I have sat through it a few times, and even with the protection they've got now and the fans they have blowing on you and stuff like that, it's tough to sit out there for a 2 hour practice. My son will probably go. He is going to be teaching, so he probably will get off early enough so he can go at least for an afternoon practice. But he'll probably be out there, but I doubt I'll be out there unless they do a practice in the Superdome. If they do a practice in the Superdome, I'm there.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm 57 years old, man. I can't sit out in that heat anymore. I really can't. But I will be interested in this training camp. This is going to be this is probably the one training camp that's really going to be different from anything else that we've seen since at least 2005. I mean, would you agree with that, Bob?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, new coaching staff, new quarterback. Mm-hmm. There's tons of intrigue. And I can't wait.
Absolutely. So yeah. So anyway, Bob, I want to thank you for putting up with me for like almost week your time. I tried to get a little earlier, but thanks for sticking with us. Like I said, next week we'll talk more about some of the best players, and hopefully we'll have some good news during the mini camp. In the meantime, we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.